everybody. Welcome to the PickSix podcast show here on CBS Sports HQ, brought to you by Subway. Subway, eat fresh. Hanging out with me today, Brinson, joined by Danny Kanell, Ryan Wilson, and John Breech. And Danny, you're looking fresh as well in the fresh Florida sun, which is always good, better than the cool weather it looked like yesterday, nice and bright out there now. And you know what? I think we're going to dive right in and talk some NFL news. And we'll begin in Tampa Bay, where two coaches at least would like consideration. In other words, the NFL, maybe Bruce Arians would like to see some fresh faces in the coaching ranks. And we start, Danny, with the fact that neither Eric Bieniemy nor Byron Leftwich ended up with head coaching jobs. Bieniemy interviewed with everybody. Leftwich didn't actually get any interviews, and we saw Bruce Arians very outspoken about it with the media. What are your thoughts on, is there any sort of distraction here? Should both of these guys have been getting more opportunities? Is the process broken? Just curious how you think these two coordinators ended up falling through the cracks in the head coaching hiring cycle.
I mean, the process is clearly broken. I mean, there's a problem out there, and the NFL has tried it with the Rooney Rule. It's just not working when you look at the lack of minority hires that are taking place across the league. And not only that, but you look at some of the coaches that have been hired this cycle, and I think a lot of fans and people look at it like, who is this guy? Like, it's a journeyman coach who finally gets an opportunity. Now, when Eric Bieniemy does interview, does he want the Detroit Lions job? I don't know that answer, and maybe he's at a position where he can be selective. I hope that is the case, but I don't have much confidence in it. I think the one solution that should be proposed, and it would make a whole lot more sense, although the owners and teams might push back against it, is why penalize the coaches that are the coordinators of the best teams in the league by making them interview while they're prepping for a potential playoff game or in a Super Bowl, as in these Bucs coordinators instances here. Why not wait for the hiring process until after the season is done? Have a hiring freeze on coaches so you could have the full slate of candidates available so they could all interview sort of on a level playing field. I mean, I would imagine that coaches get callbacks. They want to do multiple interviews, especially as you narrow your base down. And if you're trying to prepare for a Super Bowl, it's just not fair to ask you to do that. So I think that's one step in the right direction. The other thing is we need more people like Bruce Arians, who will not only hire from within, as he's the only coach or only team in the NFL who has black offensive and defensive coordinators, but is vocal about it and is making a case and making the plea that's saying, hey, something is not right here. The more people like Bruce Arians that speak up, hopefully it'll put pressure on the coaches to make better hires and more diverse hires.
That's exactly right, Danny. And I'll take it a step further. Bruce Arians has not only hired black coaches, he's hired women. He has women on his staff. He talks about the importance of having them as coaches, not as being someone who's a female. And I think at the end of the day, that's the point, getting these people opportunities to get their foot in the door. And I know the argument for Byron Leftwich and the argument we've heard previously for Eric Bieniemy is that, are they calling plays? Is it going to be BA calling plays for Tampa Bay? Is it going to be Andy Reid calling plays in Kansas City? But then the counter to that is, well, Brandon Staley just got a job. Well, Nick Sirianni just got a job. There are a lot of questions where you see these coaches getting hired for other teams who are white, and they haven't called the same plays they were worried about with some of these guys. And I think Bruce Arians has every right to be angry, and I think Eric Bieniemy has every right to be frustrated. I will say this about Eric Bieniemy. He was today on the Zoom call with reporters, and he was asked about the frustrations with not getting the job. And he said, look, I can control what I can control. He was very measured in his response. I thought it was a great answer, and it showed a lot of leadership. And he also said, I don't want to be a distraction to my team. We're here to win a Super Bowl. That's what I'm focused on. And that's exactly what you want to hear from a leader. I don't know, and Danny, you're onto something. I don't know if he wants some of these jobs that were available. Does he want the Lions job? Does he want the Texas job after Deshaun Watson begged for him to get interviewed? And Cal McNair, the owner, said, nah, we're good. We're just going to roll with Jack Easterby and see what happens. So maybe this is the best case scenario in the long run for both these guys, although they're probably frustrated that they don't have the head coaching opportunities just yet. I suspect they'll come, maybe not as quickly as they want, but I think we're on the right path, and Bruce Arians has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I think you guys both hit the nail on the head with Bruce Arians. I'll take it one step further. The NFL should just put Bruce Arians in charge of making the rules for getting minority coaches hired, because rarely do you see a coach come out and make statements like Bruce Arians has made this week. If we heard that from more coaches, from Bill Belichick, from other more notable coaches, I think that would make waves in the NFL, and you might see the league react a little bit faster because they're pretty slow-footed when it comes to making changes for things like this. I know they've been talking about the Rooney rules existed for several years, but it took so long to get it modified. Now finally we're in an off season where teams get rewarded if they hire somebody, if they develop a minority candidate in their system who gets hired away. Now you get draft picks. So they need to do more things to encourage things like that, because the fact that Eric Bieniemy has not been hired for a job is just absolutely absurd. There's no way around it. I understand why teams maybe were hesitant with Byron Leftwich. You want to see, hey, look, 2019, his first full year as an offensive coordinator, is in charge of Jameis Winston. You never want to be in charge of Jameis Winston, so you don't know fully what that person's capable of. We saw this year what he's capable of. So there's a little bit of mystery with Byron Leftwich. But Eric Bieniemy, he should have been the first person that every single team called this offseason. He should have gotten a job last year. And so it is a little bit weird that these things haven't happened. I think the NFL's taking these baby steps forward, but they need to take steps that are a little bit bigger.
All right, well, let's hear what Arians actually had to say, because we have sound of it.
I was very, very pissed that Byron didn't at least get an interview this year for the job that he's done. I think I get way too much credit, and so does Tom Brady, for what the job that Byron has done. And so, yeah, I think hopefully next year, people will see that he took Jameis Winston and broke every single record here, scoring and passing, and now Tom has broken both. So he's done a fantastic job. He's everything supposedly what people are looking for.
Yeah, but I like that Bruce Arians is actually propping up Jameis Winston as a reason why Byron Leftwich deserves interviews. But I mean, really, like, he does. And I think part of it is probably on us a little bit too in the media, because when we do these coaching lists, it's easy to sort of, everybody kind of, just like gloms onto the chalk. Like the typical name is like, I don't know, here's a list. Here's Josh McDaniels, because he should be on another list since he quit his last job before he even started. And we don't branch out enough. And Byron Leftwich should have been on there. Yeah, I think the one thing that's unfair, and I talked about this on the podcast yesterday, I believe, but Eric Bieniemy has been sort of made to be the face of the black coach who deserves to get hired. And I think that's kind of unfair, not just to him, but also to the idea of making these processes more open and more fair and more diverse. And just, that's unfortunately the nature of how it goes. It's not even fair to Eric Bieniemy, to Todd Bowles, to Byron Leftwich, to talk about them as black coaches. They are just, as Todd Bowles told Peter King of NBC, coaches. That's what they want to be. They want to coach. They're not trying to necessarily spearhead a movement, but it's on that's why the impetus is on the NFL to make changes here. And I do think that part and parcel of it is, as Danny pointed out, you can't interview, you're not going to interview these guys who are making a deep Super Bowl run until after the Super Bowl, and nobody wants to wait to hire. So they really need to figure out a way to sort of implement a new process as well. So they're not the only assistant coaches who want a head coaching job, though. Steve Spagnuolo, of course, wants to get a head coaching position. He last landed one when he managed to take out Tom Brady as the Giants' defensive coordinator. Danny, will taking out Tom Brady a second time land Steve Spags another head coaching shot?
I don't think it should. I mean, you see his record where he was with St. Louis. It wasn't the greatest record that we've seen there, and I think he's getting a lot of credit for what those guys up front, Michael Strahan and Justin Tuck and some of the other defensive players that were on that Giants team that took down Tom Brady the first time around. I do feel like Spags is probably one of those guys who is more of a coordinator, and that's your role, that's what you do best. And clearly he doesn't feel that way. He wants that other opportunity. But if he got hired again, like, that would be just the same, perpetuating the problem we're just talking about. The retreads, the guys who have gotten opportunities, not maximized them, even worse, lost their job because they had zero to little success. And then, like, what are we doing? We're just cycling the same names over again. I would be surprised if he does get an opportunity. And if it's before some of the guys that we even talk about, then it becomes borderline travesty.
I've been saying all offseason when we talk about these coaching hires that there's a difference, and this is sort of what you said, Danny, between coordinators and head coaches. You don't need head coaches to be geniuses in the room for offense and defense, because at the end of the day, they're overseeing everything, and that's what we talk about. Now, I think to the extreme is Dan Campbell, who bites people's kneecaps off and just yells and screams. I don't know if you want that, but Spagnuolo is clearly very good at coordinate up the defense. And to Danny's point, in his 3 years with the Rams, when they were in St. Louis, he went 1-15, 7-9 7-9 and 2-14. That doesn't exactly scream, let's take another lap around the field with Spagnuolo as the head coach. He did take over in 2017 for McAdoo, our guy there in New York. He went 1-3. So again, not setting the world on fire. And to Danny's point, maybe Spags is best served as a coordinator. There's no shame in that. There are a ton of guys who've been in the NFL forever who crush it as coordinators. Dick LeBeau comes to mind. He crushed it for a long time with the Steelers. Previous to that, he was the head coach in Cincinnati. John Breech can tell you that didn't work out very well in the early 2000s. Came back to Pittsburgh, won a Super Bowl, and he's in the Hall of Fame as a coach, as a player, and he should be as a coach as well. So I think everyone has their space. I know that Spagnuolo wants to get to the top of the game and be a head coach again. At the end of the day, it might make more sense for him to stay as a coordinator, where he's had a fantastic run previously, and again this time with the Chiefs.
Yeah, and Ryan, you just mentioned his fantastic run with the Chiefs, but I don't think we can understate or overstate how impressive he has been since the Chiefs hired him as defensive coordinator. They're 5-0 in the playoffs. A lot of that has to do with Patrick Mahomes. But remember, that Chiefs defense was absolutely horrible. I see Brinson laughing. Yes, but the Chiefs defense wasn't great. And so they just needed something that wasn't so leaky to kind of make that first Super Bowl run. And they finally got that. Spags kind of finally put that together. 9-2 career record in the postseason. So he always comes through in the big time. And I know we mentioned his 3 seasons with the Rams. Ryan, mentioned that 1-15 record, but he took over a team that went, I think, 3-13 one year, 2-14 one year, and then he had that team 7-9 2 years later. So it's not like he didn't do anything. And that the Rams were just a total disaster. That's one of those jobs that, I'm sure if he looks back on it, he probably regrets taking it, kind of like Eric Bieniemy would have regretted if he ended up in Houston this year. Kind of a similar situation where everything's just in total disarray and you have no chance at success. So, I do think he's done enough to deserve a job. But as Danny said, you'd love to see guys like Eric Bieniemy get hired first, but that doesn't mean Steve Spagnuolo can't be on the list of guys that deserve a job.
Worth noting, Breech, ever since the Chiefs signed Chad Henne, they have just lost once in the playoffs. So, if you want to take a correlation causation thing, I actually do think you have a point though that Steve Spagnuolo, look, Bob Sutton was the defensive coordinator before, longtime friend of Andy Reid, longtime guy who coached with Andy Reid, and he got let go, and they brought in Steve Spagnuolo, and that defense has turned a corner. It's become much better. Now they added a lot of pieces. Between trading for Frank Clark and signing for Tyrann Mathieu. And of course, Chris Jones really emerged as a star player. But by and large, you got to give credit here, I think, to Steve Spagnuolo for turning around that defense. And I'm not saying he should get a job ahead of Bieniemy or anybody else, but I do think that, ripping him for the Rams being terrible when the Rams were terrible for a really long time after the Greatest Show on Turf dissolved is not exactly a fair thing to do. I think giving a guy like that a second chance, sometimes you can sort of stumble into a pretty nice option as a retread coach. But I agree with Danny. Man, you want to see some internet Twitter outrage? Somebody hire Steve Spagnuolo before Eric Bieniemy. That'll fire up the masses for sure. In a move that I haven't seen since NC State did it. The pair of co-offensive coordinators, and by the way, it failed spectacularly. The Dolphins have promoted Eric Studesville, I think former interim coach of the Broncos, and of course, former George Godsey, former longtime quarterback coach in the NFL. Danny, your thoughts on having 2 offensive coordinators, not just one, but 2 offensive coordinators?
I don't think it matters. We see a lot of teams that have a run game coordinator and a pass game coordinator that kind of divide the authority. It all comes down to the communication that's on the sideline. I don't know how that's going to work. It would concern me, especially when you have a young quarterback like Tua, that there could be any sort of miscommunication issues or ego issues that come into play. Who's taking credit, who is not, in what is going to be such a critical year for Tua Tagovailoa that he has to take that next step. He's saying he's being very self-reflective and saying his play was below average, and I would agree, but this is a critical year for him, and now he's going to be listening to the voice of 2 guys that are potentially in his ear. But I've also seen offensive minds work, in a symbiotic relationship when I was in the Broncos with Gary Kubiak and Mike Shanahan. Those guys, Mike Shanahan was the head coach, Gary Kubiak was the coordinator, but they talked out on the sideline throughout the game, and it was seamless. So it depends on the relationship. It depends on how it goes. My initial hunch is, but it can be done. It just is going to take a lot of communication, and there might be some bumps along the road, which I don't know if this team can handle those bumps early in the season.
I actually like the idea. Now that I think about it and hear Danny talk, I like the idea a lot better. If it's Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak, you're the co-offensive coordinators, that would certainly help Tua along. But I think we've seen this sort of last year. Chan Gailey was the offensive coordinator, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was basically the de facto offensive coordinator on the sidelines once Tua got the start. I think Tua needs all the help and guidance he can get. He made a ton of mistakes last year, which is unexpected for a rookie. He has to get better. The more the merrier in terms of offensive coordinators, if Danny says they can work on the same page, because that's what the Dolphins need to get better, assuming they're sticking with Tua and not going to be in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't like this for most teams, but I actually like this for the Dolphins. I think Brian Flores has probably been thinking about it because he had both these guys split the play calling duties at the Senior Bowl. So it was like he wanted to test the water to see if it could be done and then say, hey, you know what? If it works, we'll test it out and do it on the coaching staff this year. If they do keep Tua, I like it because there's some continuity there. Both these guys were on the Dolphins coaching staff last year. So instead of bringing somebody brand new and having Tua learn a new offense, all of a sudden he's working with guys he's familiar with. And also, let's not forget, George Godsey was the offensive coordinator for the Texans in 2015 and 2016 when they got to the playoffs with Brock Osweiler and Brian Hoyer. If you can get to the playoffs with those two guys, you got to feel pretty good about having Tua as your quarterback and getting back to the postseason. So I do like the Dolphins idea. Now, will it work out? I don't know.
For a minute there, I was thinking that they were hiring George O'Leary, but actually George Godsey played quarterback at Georgia Tech for George O'Leary. And I think actually in 2001, they beat NC State. So I'm still angry about that. Fortunately, NC State was able to beat Florida State that year. Apropos of nothing, just throwing it out there. Look, speaking of the Dolphins, did you know there's a Dolphin out there that has made 6 consecutive Super Bowl picks correctly? Well, let's find out if he can make another one, shall we? Is it Snowflake? Sort of looks like it. All right, it's the Chiefs. There you go. It's an easy winner. All right, Snowflake out. So is Danny Kanell. I didn't even get to fire back on the Florida State thing. We'll be back after break. See you guys in a few minutes. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the PickSix podcast show here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by Subway. Subway, eat fresh. I'm Will Brinson, joined by Ryan Wilson, John Breech. Breech, you were looking fresh in that shirt. I love it. I got to get dressed for this show. What are you going to do when you do 18 podcasts in one day? I'd rather be at the freaking Radio Row hanging out with Prisco than doing this many podcasts. It's out of control. Anyway, speaking of Prisco, old head, right? Yeah, Pete's an old head. He's been in this game for a long time. Well, let's talk about some old heads versus new age, and that's sort of what this is. Everybody's talking about the passing of the torch and what not. Of course, Ryan, we have to start with Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. I actually saw a video of the two guys, the two quarterbacks, talking to Kay Adams of NFL Network that was posted on Twitter or live stream on NFL Network or something like that. And the most remarkable thing, sort of like you and Breech, you guys are separated by 25 years in age, but you look like you're roughly the same age. I don't know what that says about you or what it says about Breech, but Mahomes looks older than Brady. How big of is this the big storyline, the old head versus the new age here at the quarterback position?
Well, thank you for the kind words, Brinson. I will not now point out that your head is really twice the size of me and Breech's as it looks on the monitor here. So don't be confused, viewers. His head is really that big. From neck down, he's only 2 feet tall, so that's also weird. But what does this mean for Brady and Mahomes? Well, yeah, that's the thing. I saw you tweet out that picture of the two, and Mahomes is looking a little haggard, only because he's 25 years old, probably got up at 11 o'clock as 25-year-olds do, and just enjoying life. And Tom Brady's been up since 2 in the morning doing push-ups and sit-ups, chugging smoothies made out of avocados, and being pliable and all that other stuff. At the end of the day, and we sort of talked about this throughout the week on the podcast, Mahomes is clearly the better athlete. Mahomes has the better arm. You could argue about the playmakers they have at their disposal. Brady has the better defense, but I don't know if that's enough to counteract, what Patrick Mahomes has done this season and last season. I don't think it matters that Tom Brady is sipping from the fountain of youth. I think this, and it's always crazy to go against Tom Brady. We've learned that week in and week out, most recently in that Packers game. But I just feel like Patrick Mahomes is impervious to any and all comers. And oh, by the way, I bring this up every show, Andy Reid off the bye. We know how that works. So yes, this is a great storyline because Tom Brady is going to play forever. And Patrick Mahomes is almost 2 decades younger than he is. But I don't think it'll matter come Sunday because both these guys are going to be slinging. Both these guys are almost certainly headed for the Hall of Fame. And I only say that because Patrick Mahomes only played a few years. And I'm going with youth right now, though, Breech.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson, you're making the choice sound like we're picking between an iPhone and a rotary phone, where the obvious choice is going with Patrick Mahomes, who is the iPhone here. But you know what Tom Brady has is he has the smarts. He's got 20 years of experience. He's got 17 years more than Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes said a year and a half ago that he didn't even know how to read an NFL defense until he got through the 2018 season. He said this year that he's still trying to figure that kind of stuff out. That's not Brady. Brady's on the field. He's his own offensive coordinator because he reads everything that's coming at him. He knows what you're going to throw at him before you throw it at him. So he's one step ahead of everyone. And so that is Tom Brady's big advantage. And I don't have any problem. This is the main storyline of the week. It should be. We really need to appreciate these huge quarterback battles that we get in the Super Bowl because they don't come up too often. You know, you have Joe Montana versus Dan Marino, or Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, or go back to the AFC Championship games of past with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. There are these great rivalries, and I don't think we ever thought we were going to get a Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady Super Bowl. Certainly not after that AFC title game they played a couple years ago. So this is a big deal, and it might not be the passing the torch. Mahomes might be passing the torch to Brady here because Brady sounds like he wants to play for 10 more years. But I do think that this is a matchup we should enjoy. But like Wilson, I think Mahomes is the slightly more talented quarterback right now, which makes me like the Chiefs a little bit more in this game.
The slightly more talented quarterback right now? Yeah, like Brady's awesome at 43.
I'm not insulting Tom Brady.
I don't blame you. That's how you end up like Wilson, like getting clipped where he says the Cowboys are going to win 9 games and we play it once or twice a podcast. He's like Tom Brady. They're like our buddy Sam Monson at Pro Football Focus. Sam like famously wrote that Tom Brady was no longer an elite quarterback in like 2013, and that is not aged well, obviously. Maybe it was like 2009. I can't exactly remember. Tom Brady has. If he gets 100 and I believe it's 62 passing yards in this game, he will cross over 3,000 passing yards for his career in Super Bowls. That's insane. There are professional quarterbacks who were highly thought of that never had a 3,000-yard passing season. And Brady is going to end up with 3,000 passing yards in the Super Bowl. At his rate, he might get to 4,000, and maybe Mahomes can break it. You just feel like you got to be in a lot of games to do it because most of the guys, Elway's been in 5, right? And he's at like 11-28. Brady going for 10 here. It's just an incredible thing. And I think when it is possible though that if Patrick Mahomes wins this, that we're looking at sort of similar thing to what we saw with Tom Brady, where you could almost break up Tom Brady's career into 3 separate parts and have 3 separate cases for the Hall of Fame. That's how good he's been. He won 3 Super Bowls early, didn't have the gaudy stats. Then you take that middle section, he had monster numbers. They didn't win the Super Bowls. And then he rips out 3 more Super Bowls on the back end and gets to another one with a new team. I mean, Tom Brady could go into Canton as 3 separate individuals. And if Patrick Mahomes wins this one, I think you at least set the stage for him to possibly have a split career like that as well. I mean, I know that, you're not supposed to bet against Tom Brady, but what if you're just not supposed to bet against Patrick Mahomes? Because that's sort of where I'm at with Mahomes. I don't think I want anything to do with getting in the way of Patrick Mahomes. He's just too dangerous. The guys both have Hall of Fame weapons and arguably all-time great tight ends as well. So what do you think about the matchup of old head Rob Gronkowski versus new age Travis Kelce? And by the way, Wilson, they are, I think, separated in age by actually like 5 months. But still, it feels like Gronk's been around a lot longer.
Yeah, it sure does. It feels like he's been playing for 15 years. I think we said it yesterday on the show, or maybe the podcast, that I'm going to give Gronkowski the slight edge in terms of being sly because he got out of practicing this offseason by just running sprints in different T-shirts and sending them into his coaches. You get a lot of points for that. Travis Kelce, though, I think is right now in this stage of his career, even though they're close in age, the much more athletic, tight end. He's much more relied upon by his quarterback. He's one of the most important weapons on that team after Tyreek Hill, whereas Rob Gronkowski is at the point in his career after taking a year off. And even the year before that with New England, he was primarily a blocking tight end at that stage of the proceedings, just because he had so many injuries accumulate over the course of his NFL career. Came into the league in 2010 with injury concerns, why he fell down to the second round. That said, Rob Gronkowski, at the top of his game, has been absolutely dominant. Right now, however, Travis Kelce is the one who's dominating. 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons for Travis Kelce, which is mind-blowing when you think about what he's accomplished as a tight end. So over the course of their career, I'll take Gronk. Right now for this game on Sunday, I'm going to roll with Kelce.
Yeah, I agree with the game. You roll with Kelce. Over the course of the career, it's still pretty even because it feels like Kelce is still in his prime. I know Brinson just mentioned how close they are in age. When you see these guys move on the field, it feels like Rob Gronkowski is 15 years older than Travis Kelce. Gronk kind of lumbers everywhere. He catches the ball and he lumbers. That's about the only word you can describe what he does on the field, because he doesn't run. He doesn't kick people out of the club. He just lumbers through people right now, whether he's got the ball, whether he's blocking. And it's working for him this season, which is great, but he's nowhere near the weapon that Travis Kelce is now. And the thing is that Kelce's probably has a few more years where he is going to be able to produce at the rate he's producing. As Wilson just mentioned, he has 5 straight years of 1,000 or more receiving yards. He is the only tight end in NFL history to do that. Rob Gronkowski never did that. And I think the one thing with Gronk, though, that you can never take away is that he was just such a scoring weapon. We saw the graphic earlier that since 2010, there was no tight end in the NFL with more receiving touchdowns. Gronk, I think, has up there with the most receiving touchdowns of any tight end in NFL history. And so Kelce's not quite that much of a scoring machine yet. He might eventually catch him, but right now he's way behind the scoring department. So, both these guys are top 5 tight ends all time. And, it's not easy to pick which one's better, except for right now it is Kelce.
Yeah, it's easy to pick who's better right now, Breech. It's Kelce. Because, Gronk, you're like making fun of Gronk. Like you don't want to bet it. You don't want to rip Tom Brady, but you're not afraid to rip Gronk. Gronk will stroll up to Cincinnati or Nashville or whatever weird city you're living in these days, and he will throw you out of your club. He will grab you by that purple collar and he will toss you all out into your backyard, and you will be out of the club that you own. You don't mess with Gronk, pal. And look, I think Kelce's incredible. But Kelce's more of a pass catcher. I put Kelce on board. We talked about this in the podcast. I put him on board with Antonio Gates and with Tony Gonzalez. And I think the thing was, if we consider that Rob Gronkowski is better all time than Tony Gonzalez in terms of being a pure tight end, a dominant tight end, a run blocker, a pass catcher, a red zone machine, maybe the greatest pass catching red zone weapon in the history of football, and we have him as the greatest tight end ever, then in my mind, Travis Kelce has to surpass Tony Gonzalez's numbers in order to be the greatest of all time. And he has a long way before he can do that. So give me Gronk. Gronk now, Gronk forever. Gronk to Breech's house, toss him out of the club. LSU, old head versus new age. Clyde Edwards, Hilaire versus Leonard Fournette, 2 running backs in this game. Former first-round picks out of LSU. Wilson, who you got?
Yeah, this is sort of an interesting one because Clyde Edwards-Helaire is just a rookie. He didn't play a lot this season, or for points of the season because of injury. Playoff Lenny, I guess, is a thing. I'm not really getting into it. And Leonard Fournette has sort of had a resurgence in Tampa Bay, but it's hard to forget what he did or didn't do in Jacksonville. One of Prisco's favorite things to say is that Fournette runs to contact. And when you hear that, it's one of those things you can't get out of your head because you watch him, and that's exactly what he does. He's had more success, like I said, this year in the Tampa Bay offense. But Ronald Jones has had success. Keyshawn Vaughn, to a limited degree, has had success. And also, the Chiefs aren't crazy about running the ball. They pass the ball 63% of the time. They threw it nearly 70% of the time in Week 12 when these two teams last met. I think the reason you draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire is to use him partly to run the ball, but also to catch the balls out of the backfield. He had more than 50 catches his final year at LSU with Joe Burrow. So it's hard to compare these two because there's not a lot of data points. But if you're going to ask me who I'm rolling with, I'll go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire just based on the upside of what he can potentially do, even though we didn't see a ton of that outside of that Week 1 breakout season to start the year.
Normally, I agree with what Ryan Wilson says, but I do not here. If we're just picking one running back for this game, I'm taking Leonard Fournette, and that's because you know who stops the run real well? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm sure the Chiefs were watching film and saying, gosh, we're not going to be able to run on that Tampa Bay defense. We're just, you know what? Let's just throw the ball on every single play. The Chiefs don't have to run the ball if they don't want to because they're so successful throwing it. So we might not even see Clyde Edwards-Helaire really get too many carries in this game. And yes, he can be a weapon out of the backfield, but the Chiefs have so many other weapons that I'm not sure he's going to do very much damage. Whereas you look at playoff Lenny, he has been one of Tom Brady's favorite targets. He has turned into some sort of Derrick Henry clone as a running back. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what he's eating for breakfast. I don't know if he's on the TB12 diet, but he has turned things around. He's looked like the player that Jacksonville thought he would be when they drafted him. So if we're talking about just one game, and that game is this Super Bowl, I am taking Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, so I'm furiously Googling Leonard Fournette's stats. I guess I missed when Derrick Henry carried the ball 29 times for 118 yards in 2 playoff games. Remember, like what? What are you talking about? Playoff Lenny, he just found the end zone a couple of times. He caught a couple of passes. He's actually been a great receiving weapon, but he has not been a Derrick Henry clone. Breech, come on, pal. Anyway, look, I'll take Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I do agree with you. I think playoff Lenny more likely to have success in this particular game, but he is an old head. He's been released by the Jaguars. He's a top 10 pick on him. He's a wasted space. He's the Buccaneers passing down back. Ronald Jones is better than Leonard Fournette, although playoff Lenny has certainly been better. But I want Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 55 catches last year at LSU. I think he could be a sneaky weapon out of the backfield for the Chiefs. And if it comes down to it and they have a big lead and they are trying to run the ball some on the way out, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire sees plenty of carries. Will he be involved in our prop bets? Will somebody take an over on Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Find out coming up after the break when we reveal our best prop bets here on the CBS Sports HQ PickSix podcast show. Time now. Our top plays presented by Subway. This one highlighting the borderline catastrophic yet heroic efforts by Chad Henne in the AFC divisional round to maintain the Chiefs' lead over the Browns. With Patrick Mahomes forced to leave the game with a head neck injury, Henne almost blew this game when he came in and had an overthrown ball into the end zone for an interception. But he's able to come back, rallied. He managed to convert a critical 4th down in the final seconds to hold on to the 22-16 victory over Cleveland. Hashtag anything was possible is born. 66 pass yards and an interception. But you know what? He had the game-winning kneel down. And old Chad Henne punched that ticket and got the Chiefs to advance to the AFC Championship game. That is your top plays presented by Subway. Subway, eat fresh. We got some top plays for you here too in terms of props, always, as always, courtesy of our friends at William Hill, and we will dive in with the first touchdown scorer. We do not recommend, Wilson, that you bet on Chad Henne to score the first touchdown in this game. If you do, you should be picking lotto numbers or working for Miss Cleo. Who would you like to take as the first touchdown scorer in Super Bowl LV, Wilson?
Miss Cleo, RIP to her. Mike Evans, I'm going plus 1,000 to score the first touchdown. We know the Chiefs defense struggles in the red zone, assuming that the Bucs get down to the red zone on that first drive or so. Mike Evans seems like a likely target. He's huge. He's 6'5". He makes a lot of plays at the goal line. We know that Tom Brady likes to throw the ball up historically to Rob Gronkowski, but as we said last segment, Rob Gronkowski is a glorified blocker at this point. He does make plays in the passing game, but they're few and far between. Chris Godwin struggled with drops. Antonio Brown's health is a concern. I think Mike Evans scoring the first touchdown plus 1,000 is a good way to go, Breech.
First of all, I think we should find out what that Dolphin from earlier in the show would pick here, because that guy has picked 6 straight Super Bowl winners. Give me some Dolphin props here. But here's what I think. I think Wilson, I'm not taking a Buccaneers player because I can't back anybody who's a Tom Brady teammate to score the first touchdown. Tom Brady has played in 9 Super Bowls. He's never scored a touchdown, thrown a touchdown pass. His offense has never scored a touchdown in the first quarter in any of those 9 Super Bowls. He has only led his offense to 3 points in 9 first quarter games in the Super Bowl. So I am not going with a Buccaneers player because Tom Brady is notorious for getting off to a slow start. Instead, I'm going with Travis Kelce. The reason I like Kelce, 11 touchdowns this year. 9 of those 11 are in the red zone. Patrick Mahomes loves going to Kelce once they get down into the red zone. The other thing I like about Travis Kelce is that he has scored a touchdown in 5 of the past 6 postseason games that he has played in. He is just a guy that scores in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl, whatever it is, he scores. So I'm going to go with him as the first touchdown scorer.
I like Travis Kelce. And by the way, Breech, that's a great point you make with Tom Brady. Scored his first quarter points in the last time the Patriots appeared in the Super Bowl. A little bit of a fun fact and a nice little convergence that you might not be aware of. Bruce Arians, 2 prior stints as an offensive coordinator in the Super Bowl. His teams, both Steelers teams, managed just 3 total points in the first quarter in both of those games. Slow starters, these fellas, for the Buccaneers. So I'm with you. I want nothing to do with Tampa first touchdown scores. They needed a bunch of third downs to get that first touchdown against Green Bay and got very lucky. I think the Chiefs were going to stop, worst case, and then they go down and score. But I want a little big shot here. I want to take a look at 16-1 Patrick Mahomes. They love running him in the red zone down there. They love doing those sort of the jet sweep option plays. They'll do a traditional option. And I think with the way that the Bucs will guard the Chiefs in terms of those condensed spaces, you'll see a lot of pressure with those 2 tackles out. You'll see Devin White following Travis Kelce. You have him streak across the formation. Tyreek Hill run a little motion to the left side, and all of a sudden it's wide open to the right. Mahomes is sprinting in, uncovered, 16-1 cashes, and the Super Bowl is profitable from Jump Street. That's how we get going with these props. Now, you can also bet on somebody to score a touchdown at any time in the game. The odds are a little bit lower, of course. Ryan, you wouldn't dare try and prop up your boy Sammy Watkins here, would you?
It's funny you say that, because I would dare to prop up my guy, Sammy Watkins, plus 275. He's so far down the list, you don't even see him here. But here's the thing, Sammy Watkins hasn't played since week 16. He's had a calf injury, so he's had a lot of time off. He was questionable coming into this week. The expectation is he will play. And if Todd Bowles has learned anything since the week 12 matchup, is you have to, under every circumstance, no matter the situation, double team Tyreek Hill and double team Travis Kelce. And if you do that, who is going to make plays for the Chiefs? Well, there are a ton of guys. And one of them could be Sammy Watkins, who has, when he's on the field, been pretty productive. We sort of get lost in the conversation, partly last year because me and our former coworkers said that Sammy Watkins would be better than Devontae Parker. That blew up in our face. But I think Sammy Watkins has a chance to redeem himself, in my eyes anyway, by scoring a touchdown at any point in this game. I think there's a good chance he does it. And you make yourself a little money if you put some money down on old Sammy.
I am going to go with someone who was not even on the props graphic that the producers put up, and that person is Tom Brady. Brinson, you went with Patrick Mahomes. You went with the quarterback route for the first TD, for the anytime TD. I'm going with Brady. Look, here's the thing. If the Buccaneers get down to the 1 yard line at any point in this game, it could be naturally driving down there. It could be a pass interference call in the end zone that puts the ball at the 1 yard line. There are a lot of ways to get to the 1 yard line, and if that happens, what the Buccaneers gonna call? Tom Brady is gonna QB sneak it and score a touchdown. So at plus 400, 4-1 odds, I love betting on Brady to get a touchdown in this game.
I'm gonna go really off the board. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take a look at a little odds boost parlay that you can grab at William Hill. They offer tons of these cool specials where you can check out and find the sort of a discount on your betting life. And I'm going to take Tyreek Evans. So I guess it is Tyreek Evans, who's a former NBA basketball player. Technically, this is the Tyreek Evans prop. Tyreek Hill and Mike Evans to both score a touchdown anytime. They both have to get in the end zone, and it is plus 250. What do you think's more likely? The corpse of Sammy Watkins rolls his old bones out on the field and scores a touchdown, or the most prolific pass catchers for both of those teams find the end zone? I think it's Evans and Tyreek. Give me the combo over Sammy Watkins. I do also like, to Breech's point, the under on both teams score a touchdown of 1.5 yards. I think I like that as well. Now this is a deeper shot. Pick someone to score 2+ touchdowns. A bit of a value play here, Wilson.
Yeah, my guy is the same guy that Breech called Derrick Henry, but then Breech said you get down to the 1 yard line and you're gonna run a 43-year-old quarterback up the middle. Just so we're clear, I'm going with playoff Lenny Fournette. In the red zone, the Chiefs defense is terrible. In the red zone, the Tampa Bay offense is fantastic. The Chiefs defense also stinks on short yardage conversions. Give the ball to Lenny at the 1 yard line, Breech. You don't give it to Tom Brady, who might be in a wheelchair at that point. Lenny Fournette, 2 touchdowns.
Man, Wilson, you have the Buccaneers scoring a lot of touchdowns in this game. I'm going to do simple math. If I'm betting on someone to score 2 touchdowns, it's going to be the guy I bet on to score the first touchdown, and that is Travis Kelce. If I think he's going to score the first one, he's already halfway to hitting this prop, and at plus 333, you know what? I'll take it. And one thing he has done, I mentioned that he has scored a touchdown in 5 of the 6 playoff games that he has been in. He scored multiple touchdowns in 2 of the 6 career playoff games that he has played in. So Travis Kelce shows up big in big games. This is a big game. He might even score 3 touchdowns, but I'll keep it tame and say 2.
Yeah, you know who actually has scored 3 touchdowns against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year? That would be Tyreek Hill, when he had 269 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns in the Week 12 27-24 victory by the Kansas City Chiefs. So if I'm going to take somebody who's going to score twice, it's going to be the fastest player in football, who, by the way, somebody poked the cheetah, Scotty Miller. Scotty freaking Miller, what are you doing coming out and claiming you might be the fastest guy in football before you're about to play Tyreek Hill? He's going to score 3 touchdowns, and after every one, he's going to run over and give you the freaking cheetah signal that he dusted you and remind you that you're on the bench, that you don't even start, and you're claiming you're the fastest player in the NFL. Scotty Miller's great, but get out of here, pal. I will take Tyreek Hill at plus 333 to score 2 touchdowns, because we've seen him do it against the Buccaneers. And Carlton Davis, your Instagram game better be strong, pal, because you are about to be set on fire. Get those emojis ready. All right, coming up after the break, we will hit some more prop bets, because they're literally like 1,600 available. And we're going to give you a pick for every single one of them before we get to Sunday. Stay tuned. PickSix Podcast Show. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the PickSix Podcast Show here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by Subway. Subway, eat fresh. Man, I'm starving. I would wolf down some Subway. Will Brinson here, Ryan Wilson, and John Breech to break down the final set of props here on this lovely Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have tons of HQ coverage, of course, from Tampa Bay. 24/7 coverage, because that's how we roll in CBS Sports HQ. But if you want some great content, some talk about fire in the belly, maybe a guy who looks like the Penguin from Batman 2, sitting on the set with Danny Kanell and breaking it down. Pete Prisco and Danny will be doing that, so you can check them out on CBS Sports HQ early in the morning. Brady Quinn will also be fired up. Highly recommend you check it out throughout the day. And of course, we'll be back Wednesday and then Friday for more PickSix podcast shows, and streaming live on Twitch before the Super Bowl, as well as YouTube. Check out those accounts for more fun and Super Bowl shenanigans. Let's get into a few more props before we say goodbye, and we'll start. First scoring play of the game. All odds courtesy of our friends at William Hill. Wilson, you can go with Chiefs safety, Bucks safety, Chiefs field goal. Yeah, you get the point. Any sort of scoring process. What do you like?
I like drop kick field goal. Who am I, John Breech? I'm not going with a drop kick field goal. I'm going with the Bucks touchdown. You guys last segment almost talked me into Chiefs touchdown, but I previously said Mike Evans is going to score the first touchdown, so I have to stick with that. That's what's going to happen. Forget the stats, Breech, in terms of Tom Brady struggling in his first drive in the Super Bowl. It won't matter, because as you predicted, they're going to score a ton of points in this game, and it's going to start on the first drive with Mike Evans crossing the old goal line.
Wilson, Tom Brady doesn't struggle in the first drive. He struggles the entire first quarter. That could be like 4 drives. Again, I'll say it one more time. He has been to 9 Super Bowls. He has never led his team on a touchdown drive in the first quarter. He has scored 3 total points in the first quarter, 9 Super Bowls. That is 0.3 points per game, Wilson. I know you're not a math guy, so I thought I would break it down for you because of that. Again, I am not picking a Buccaneers score as my first score. So obviously, as a special teams guy, I'm going with Chiefs field goal. The last time these 2 teams played, Chiefs drove right down the field. The Buccaneers then buckled down in the red zone and held the Chiefs to a field goal. The first score was the Chiefs field goal in week 12. I'm not gonna bet against history. I'm gonna say it repeats itself, and the first score is the Chiefs field goal again.
Little disappointed, Breech, that one, you didn't plug the fact that if people subscribe to the PickSix podcast, they will get our special micropod on kicking props for the Super Bowl, which will get them free money because you are, in fact, the favorite son of a man who nearly once won a Super Bowl MVP with his kicking prowess in the big game. And yet, you disappointed not just me, but your father. So good job by you. And also, I would point out that Breech has a great prop on William Hill. First field goal made. 37 to 43 yards. Breech did the math. He did the analytics. He set the hamsters loose, and they told him exactly how far the first field goal would be made. 3.5 to 1, a nice little bet there. So highly recommend you check that out. I'm going to take, look, I'm telling you that Tyreek Hill is going to go nuts, that Travis Kelce is going to go crazy, that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to have a great game script and march down the field on a blitz-happy defense, or maybe Todd Bowles plays zone but thinks Andy Reid will fall for it, but he won't because Andy Reid always beats his old assistants up. I think this is a Chiefs touchdown all the way. Love Chiefs touchdown for first score, and love sprinkling on Mahomes on that little bootleg to win that as well. Super Bowl MVP. You have to wager on this. If you're wagering on the Super Bowl and you don't wager on Super Bowl MVP, you're not even stop. Go home. So Wilson, give me a pick for Super Bowl MVP.
Well, I might think Mike Evans is going to score the first touchdown, and the Chiefs have a history in the playoffs of falling behind by a lot of points and then roaring back. I think they are going to roar back, and Tyreek Hill is going to have a lot to do with it. Go back to week 12, he had 269 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, did most of that damage in the first half. If he comes anywhere close to that in the Super Bowl, he's getting the MVP. I like the odds at 11 to 1, so I'm going to go with old Tyreek Hill there to have another big day.
Usually when you're betting on Super Bowl MVP in a game where Tom Brady's playing, his odds are like -190. But because Patrick Mahomes is in the game, we're actually getting good value with Tom Brady. We're getting almost 2 to 1. If the Buccaneers win, there is about a 95% chance it is going to be because Tom Brady played a heck of a game. So if you're going to give me 2 to 1 almost with Tom Brady, I'm going to take it. So I like Brady to win the MVP at +190.
So let me get this straight. And I don't disagree with you, Breech. There is some value there in Tom Brady because you are getting almost 2 to 1. And if the Buccaneers win, one would think that Tom Brady will get heavy consideration for Super Bowl MVP. However, there's also great value on Patrick Mahomes because the current Chiefs money line is -165. When we click over into the player props and look at the MVP for the Pro Football Championship, I love it, Patrick Mahomes -120. The way that this gets decided is sports writers in the press box filling out quickly a ballot before they sprint down and do interviews and write stories furiously on deadline. That means if Patrick Mahomes plays well or the winning quarterback plays well, they're probably going to win. So I get Patrick Mahomes for -120 at that price in this Super Bowl and then better the Chiefs money line. I am absolutely taking it all day long. All right, quickly, 1-word answer, Wilson. Heads or tails?
Tails fails, but I'm going with tails.
Breech.
Tails.
It's always tails. Tails never fails. Just like this podcast never fails. This show never fails to entertain. Make sure you come back tomorrow and check out the podcast. For Ryan and John, I'm Will. We will see you guys later.